share my screen. So it is Tuesday, May 4th, and this is the database team weekly meeting. Jose is not here. I looked at the InfraDev issues. There was nothing new, so I think we're in good shape. He did have a request, and it's probably mostly directed to you. Can we, Andreas, can we pause reindexing during the upgrade? The upgrade's happening this weekend.
Yeah, we can. I'll make sure that happens on Friday. Same thing for the data migrations.
And then Andreas, you had the next topic.
Yeah, I saw that issue about the cybertech training coming up, or and a question about what should be the agenda. I was wondering, as far as I remember, the last time cybertech did a lot of stuff on Postgres itself, like normal Postgres stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if it would be worth looking for something beyond that, perhaps in addition to that. And I didn't really know what kind of budget we have, or if that was an option at all. Like go and particularly look for something that gives us a little bit insight into how you would approach sharding with Postgres, for example. Perhaps that is something that we can even ask cybertech what they would suggest.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit afraid they might not have something, but I don't know.
Yep. So I've only had one conversation with the same people at Cybertech. So everybody that worked with us last year is available this year. And I specifically asked for, Lawrence was the trainer last year. He's available. There's times this summer when he's not available. So we'll just need to make sure we coordinate with when he's available. And I indicated, like, let's start with last year's agenda. There's some things we'd like to drop and some requests that we will have for the new agenda. So, and Patrick was totally open to it, but it's probably going to depend on how comfortable Lawrence is with training. So I will put together an issue. I'll find last year's agenda and content. I'll put it in there, and then we can just kind of say, keep, modify and drop, and then suggestions to add new topics, and then we can present that to Cybertech and see what they can do. They were pretty open to modifications last year. Like, we added in the Ruby on Rails section in Active Record, and they just had to find someone within their staff that could actually do that piece of presentation. So they are open to it. Just a caveat, we haven't got the budget approval yet, so we're still hoping to get it. I think there is support at Christopher's level to actually do this. It's good timing to ask for it with database issues that we've been having. So we don't have approval yet, but I'm going to continue to assume that we will eventually get approval. We'll get the agenda together and reach out to Cybertech once we have the approval and start scheduling. So I'll get that going.
Awesome, thanks.
Yep. And then you get the next one.
Primary key migration. Something that Camille pointed out was that there are certain kinds of things we want to also look at for the primary key migrations or models, because we have been looking at, for example, the CI builds table and looking at foreign key constraints that are well defined in the database, and then using that to figure out what other tables do we need to touch to migrate for the primary key. And what Camille pointed out was that there is at least 2 or 3 already known models that have a polymorphic association to CI builds in this case, I think. And that means we don't have a foreign key constraint defined on a database. So there is more things we would need to look at, make sure that we catch all those things that are pointing towards CI builds and other tables. And I wasn't quite sure if we are in a sort of a good position to do that. I think we can look around models and find those. But I was wondering if we should perhaps also have somebody in the Verify group looking through that, because they know their model best, I think. And the risk coming from that is if we don't catch all the places where we need to migrate the primary key, then this is going to stop working as soon as there is a value that is high enough, basically, which might not even happen right away, but happen sometime later, which might come in as a surprise. So we should be rather diligent with that. And Fabian, you asked about a specific ask. I think it would be great if we could have someone sort of review what tables do we need to migrate to avoid this overflow happening.
Yeah, no, like my point is, and sorry, my AirPods are charging, so I hope you can hear me all right. So if we can be very crisp on, you need to look at these tables, right? Because we need that kind of information for the primary key migration. If we can complete that by this date, right, we have an issue with our database toppling over. I think we have a pretty strong case for saying, please go look at this, right? But the more concrete we can be in terms of what we want people to do and by when we want them to do it, the easier it will be for them to say, yes, we'll find a person in the team and do it. So I think also I just checked, there is the engineering allocation thing, right, for stage groups. And I think CI verify is supposed to allocate at least 10%, to these types of things. Just going to use this now that we have it, right? And I think we can make a very strong case that this is one of those things that needs to be prioritized because it impacts our ability to scale. So
I don't think that's a scalability question. I mean, ultimately it is, but it's an existential question. Like if we miss those things, then as soon as the overflow happens, it's going to break. Like,
yeah, maybe I was being polite, right? I think if the point was to say it's a scalability question, you say like, well, it's actually we will scale to 0, right? Because everything will topple over. Then I think we have an even stronger case, right? So my point is, we should ask, maybe we should like add something to the issue, right? And just say like, this is the ask, right? This is why we need it. And then I'm happy to move this to verify and speak to their PM. Yeah.
I'll create an issue later today and ping you on that. I think messaging wise, I think it would be just great to have somebody with the domain insight in as a second or as a pair of eyes, basically.
No, that makes total sense to me.
Or lack of better term. So we'll create an issue per table being migrated to have an expert within that stage review to make sure that we're not missing anything. So like verify, I would tag Gregors on that because he's gonna have the most knowledge and be able to jump right in. I know he's overloaded, but as Andreas put it, this is an existential problem and we don't have a lot of time to mess around. So it should probably be prioritized pretty quickly.
I foresee no problems, quite frankly. Yeah. I can't see somebody not prioritizing this.
Yeah. And let me know if you need help on creating those issues, Andreas. I have some time later on today. I can help crank those out.
Thanks.
Question came up. So moving on to number 4, if we're done with number 3. On the migration testing prioritization, there was a question on whether the issues in the epic are in priority order. It came up when Alex and I were talking. It's probably a question to Andreas.
We even have multiple epics, so
yeah. We're on V1 right now, right? So are these in priority order? So if someone has time to pick up or is looking for something to pick up, should they just go from the top of this list or should they look at the build board?
Oh, sorry, I was on the wrong. I thought it was about the primary keys migration. Sorry. No, I don't think this is in priority order. Or there's any like priority defined on that. It's probably also not that there is any like dependencies between those things. No, I think can be tackled all the same in a sense, if that helps.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding of the issues that are left in this epic is that we would like to do all of them for V1, and I don't think any of them depend on each other. So I guess I'm just restating what Andreas just said. So sorry.
You're validating what Andreas just said. So all good. All right, on to the next item then. So looking at the build board, Cross has the first one. That one's underway. Andreas, you got the next one.
Yeah, optimizing batch sizes. That's been running. That's been adjusting the batch size automatically depending on how much we can do in 2 minutes, basically.
Mhm.
And sometimes I like to think it works quite well, and sometimes the database load is just very random. So it's like it keeps adjusting stuff, but we don't know how good it is really. And sometimes it's just the assumption breaks that you're seeing more consistent database load, and that's not always the case. It is still, I think, very useful because we can just use it for self-hosted, and they're gonna like increase their batch size as much as they can. So we don't have to figure that out. And there was an additional request coming recently over the weekend. So in addition to basically trying to maximize the throughput for the migration, we should also be mindful about the state of the database in a sense. So we had a situation where we basically had an alert going for the dead tuples ratio on the table. So we keep updating a lot of tuples on the table. And in some situations, Vacuum might not be able to catch up with that. We don't know why that was the case. It was working fine before that, but over the weekend it wasn't. And we can actually tell when that happens. So we will be able to maybe just pause the migration when we reach that threshold. So basically to avoid the noise for the on-call. There is an issue for that somewhere in the board already.
Okay. Next one I closed because it's not a consideration we need to worry about. Andreas is going to pause for the next upgrade. Not sure what this one was actually.
That got superseded, I think, by some merge request that wasn't flagged.
Okay. Yep. And CI build is underway. So Kraz is ready for the next one. CI build trace chunks. Scrolling over to in review. Both of the working group patterns. Anything to update on the read mostly, Andreas?
No, I haven't been able to work on that again. I was wondering, like, there was a suggestion to basically expand things and describe a caching layer. Mm-hmm. And I need to figure out how important that is for us right now, because otherwise I think it's ready.
Yeah, that almost seems like a second version, right? I think the version that you've submitted so far is great and probably should be merged, and then we can build on it with secondary ideas. So
yeah, and I think we have a lot of the things that we described there available, like the caching mechanics. We were talking about making it easier, making it more convenient, more consistent, which all makes sense. But yeah, perhaps that's the second iteration on that.
Yep. Okay. I'll add a comment in there on the MR later on. Let's see, Heinrich, the background migration to the admin panel.
Yeah, I'm working on the first iteration, should be for review soon. I'm not sure what the MVP is for this issue. Like, do we need the action buttons, like allowing admins to retry? I guess we do, right, for self-hosted when they get to a failed state or something. So I guess that's part of that issue. But yeah, I'll still do it in smaller MRs though. We could still deploy the first MR, which is just take a view and then go from there.
Yep, that sounds great. All right, Holly.
Yep, I just moved that one to in review. It's basically done and waiting for feedback and merging.
Awesome. I think this is Alex's picture. Yep, Alex.
Yep. Same thing there. I was just gonna start looking at a new issue today while this one goes to review. I think it's hopefully it's good. We'll see. It depends on if Ali merges before me, because if he does, then I think we have to fight or something. I'm not quite sure how that works. I'm kidding. Yeah, sorry.
First one in wins. That's the rule. Andreas, looks like you're on the next one.
Yeah, we've Krasimir described how we can, or what the customer can do to fix that problem. I'm still to review that, which is taking a little bit longer.
Okay. And there's a topic later on the agenda. Kras asked, like, at what point do we just send it over to like Ben, our support stable counterpart, say, hey, you've seen something like this before. Can you triage this before it comes straight to the database group? Does it seem like one of these issues in here bypassed support? So we can talk about that later on. Andreas with the next three.
Right, the dashboard for the migrations that was waiting on another metric that we needed to add, and we need to do a little bit of Prometheus foo to actually properly render those dashboards. And the metric got deployed yesterday, so that should be unblocked in a sense. So next step will be Prometheus foo and then adding those dashboards. Hopefully that works out. And Andrew is helping a lot with that, so that's really good. CI build trace sections, that is an interesting one because it doesn't have a single column primary key, and we use that a lot for the batch migrations. So there's a composite primary key, and we're basically wondering how to go with that. We can use part of that composite primary key and just use the same batching mechanics as we have now, but then you don't have a lot, you can have like varying batch sizes or amount of data that you're actually touching, because we're not batching by the primary key itself. And that is a question, and Yannis and I wanted to discuss that when he's back. It is sort of prepared, but we're not really sure if we want to go this way yet. So that's an ongoing discussion. There's also no rush with that, or even with other tables. I think the CI builds migration is currently running. Still supposed to take more than 2 weeks. And so if we add more tables right now to the queue, it's just going to be queued. So maybe there is other stuff that we focus on right now. And the last one, there's a problem in production where we are being paged for it quite a lot, which is a query that falls over every now and then, and that is also slow when it hasn't fallen over. So it's either slow or super slow, and there is perhaps a chance to add a very targeted index to speed that up, although like looking at the amount of indexes on that table on CI builds, that is totally only a band-aid, but maybe that helps us reduce the noise a little bit.
Right. So ready for development. Is this in the right order? One's okay. Is there anything that should bubble up to the top? I guess would be a better question.
I think we should be shipping the migrations to self-hosted. There's no reason I'm keeping that back, and it should go into the release. So sometime this week or next week. I think it's at the bottom somewhere. Yes, very much at the bottom.
This one?
Yeah.
Wish there was an easier way to do this. Oh, here's the one that you're talking about earlier. The dead tuple ratio. Okay, sounds like we're in good shape on this board. Close it, go back to the agenda. Triage board. Yannis was on perpetual triage for a while there. So we'll get back into our normal rotation. The way we did it before was we just started with, I think, Andreas, and then we went alphabetical through first name. So we welcome Alex and Ali. You guys get skipped by us starting with Andreas, and we'll go through the rotation after that. So you guys are a couple weeks out for triage. We just keep an eye on this board, and actually really anything coming into group database to see if we need to add labels like active or triage. And I don't know, Andreas, have you looked at the board lately to see if there's anything that we need to focus on or bring into our backlog?
I was starting to look through that yesterday. There was a question. This actually, I wanted to ask you about it. The database usage by namespace at the bottom. Is that something that we still need? There was a question like, what are the top 10 namespaces by database storage size? Has that popped up again?
Nope, it has not. So it's fine where it is.
Okay.
We don't need to prioritize it right now.
Should we then? Should we close those issues if they're not needed, or put them to the backlog if we still want to keep them?
Yeah, I'll put it in the backlog right now.
Right.
I'll revisit it later, see if the folks that asked for it still want it. Yeah, and there was, I referred to this earlier, so questions on when can we defer. I think, yeah, I'm not sure how the database label got added to this one. Oh, they already added it. Okay. Yeah, I'd say, and I probably need to verify this with Ben, so we're not just fire hosing him with work. Like our initial instinct should be we send it over to support, see if they've reviewed it first, and see if they can come up with a fix for it before we take a look at it. If that makes sense.
And second question, after that, perhaps there is a backend team that owns the table or the migration or knows more about that. Actually, I thought it would be nice if we had migrations annotated with their own as like we do in other cases, where you basically can tell which group to reach out to. That might even be helpful later when we talked about documenting the schema better than you already know which team introduced what parts, and perhaps that helps us even generate things more automatically later.
So it seems like there's a common pattern of these support questions where a customer like skipped migrations, right? They just went from one build to like 3 beyond. Do we not have anything in our migrations that says, hey, you can't run this until the prior one has run?
We don't. There's no explicit dependency defined. Yet another thing we might want to add. There's version numbers, so there is a certain kind of partial ordering across the migrations, but there is no dependency checking.
Okay. Problem for future us, right? Do we have an issue in there somewhere to investigate that? I'm going to overly simplify this. Seems like it'd be pretty simple to say I can't run this until the previous one has run, and each migration would only have to know the previous version to solve that problem, right? You got to start somewhere. Okay, I'll put a very simple issue together to talk about that.
Yeah, I think Rails migrations are already sequential, right? So we shouldn't have problems with Rails migrations. I think the problem happens with background migrations, which they run in the background, right? And this is what we kind of discussed during what do we call this, the released the primary key migrations to self-hosted thing, where we also, discussed where we need to find a way to like enforce that all the background migrations are done before we do the swap. So it's kind of like the same thing, because right now we only have docs for it, right? We tell customers you can only upgrade after migrations, but we don't do anything to enforce it.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. I'll put a very simple issue together where we can talk about ideas on that one, because it seems like that would solve a lot of problems. I don't know how simple it would be to implement, but okay, next topic. So the Postgres AI question, I was actually asked once we upgraded our hardware, we're gonna revert. Sounds like Andreas is saying we've already reverted back and we're using the same hardware as production at this point.
Yeah, we had troubles with that. Then we went back to what we had before. My understanding is that the upgrade is not going to change any of that. Like we have the same instance type after the upgrade, so we're good, I think.
Okay. So we just continuing to run into disk issues. I saw, I don't know what day it was, sometime this week there were Postgres AI problems.
Oh yeah, there was a disk running out of disk space sometime this week, well, last week. And that comes from like keeping clones. You can like mark them as permanent, so they don't get cleaned up automatically. And you can check the disk space when you look at the Postgres AI interface, but there is no monitoring for that matter, and also no alerting. That's part of the sort of the make things more mature operationally. Like they were just running an instance that nobody's monitoring that automatically. We should have more insight into that.
Okay. On a semi-related note, we're in negotiations for renewing contract with them right now. So our current contract ends at the end of the month, and we got budget approval to continue for at least 6 more months. So we're in good shape right now. All right, we are at the end of the agenda. Any other topics folks want to cover today?
This lab is great. Just wanted to put that out there.
What's great?
Sorry.
That's great.
Database lab. Database lab.
Oh, okay. The database part cut off, and it sounded like you said slab is great. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, nope. Database lab, it's excellent. Just wanted to state that on the record.
It's been a good purchase so far. Hopefully we can keep using it for a while.
Like for a second, I understood fab is great. And I thought, like, it's talking to me. Is it like abbreviating my name? What's happening? Right?
That's your new name, Fabian. We're all going to refer to you as Fab.
It's like, yeah.
Fab, you're also pretty great.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to hear. All right. So, all right. Thanks, everyone.
Happy Tuesday. Good luck with your boat, Andreas.
Yep. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with your boat.
Thanks.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.